Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody to the August 21st, 2025 meeting of the Newmarket School Board. We will start, as always, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. We will start the meeting this evening with public comment. Any members of the public like to come to the microphone and address any of the topics on the agenda? Going once, going twice. All right, we will close public comment at 5:16. Did any members of the board receive any public correspondence since the last time we were together? No? Okay, good. So we'll move on to board comments and committee updates. Any committee updates?
Superintendent and the facilities director and I met for the CIP committee internally to discuss the CIP proposal we'll be sending over to the town CIP committee, which Superintendent Allen and Brian will be presenting tonight. And I received an email from Bart, the town planner, and looking to schedule the town CIP committee, so that should be happening soon.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee updates? No?
Kathy, Todd, and I continue to go on with negotiations for paraeducators, and it's going well.
Okay, sounds good.
And Todd and I had our first meeting with the Seacoast School of Technology on Monday evening, was it? Yes, and they gave us an update. Enrollment right now for the entire school is 662, but there's still add drops, and they're looking forward to having a good year.
Great.
662, is that what you said?
Okay. Before we leave this, I guess I have one board comment, which I haven't, apologies, I didn't really preface this in advance with anybody on the board, but a topic of conversation that has been receiving a fair bit of attention at the Charter Commission that made me start thinking about us is the annual scheduled meeting between the town council and the school board. The subject matter is of interest to a lot of people on the committee in terms of just wanting to see better coordination between the two municipal entities within the town as far as budgeting and priorities and other things. And it just started me thinking that there's really no reason that we couldn't adopt our, some institutionalized imperative of our own to invite the council to meetings, just as they're obligated under the town charter to invite us to a meeting once a year. Something that, based on some charter committee members' reactions, seemed to be of particular interest and value, would be if we could have a joint meeting like that ahead of both government entities moving into the budget season, to just talk about relative priorities. If anybody's got some big rocks coming up in this budget season, that probably the other town entity should be aware of it. I
think that's done informally, but it might be interesting to
have
a formal discussion.
Right. It certainly happens between the administration of the town and the school district. The notion that seemed to find a little currency among some of the Charter Commission members is, well, the elected officials should probably be involved in this conversation as well. And as currently construed, unless the Charter Commission recommends changing our form of government, the town charter doesn't really, it's not a governing document for the school district. It only relates to the town, but it seemed like something that a lot of people, and it also saw a little bit of the feedback we got in the survey, that we just have the we just got the results before the meeting, so nobody on the Charter Commission has had a lot of time to dig through it and think about it, but you saw a bit of a preference there of folks to say, gee, sure would be nice if the two entities could get together and talk about the tax rate, so.
Seems like maybe just aligning the joint meeting to correlate with that better would make sense rather than us inviting them and having potentially 2 meetings a year.
I mean, there's a point of view that was voiced that, well, maybe 2 isn't enough. Maybe it should be more of a regular thing. I don't agree or disagree with that. It's just something that has come up that is probably worth us talking about, and
I would love to hear the agenda items that people would recommend, because I
Yeah.
think we do a pretty good job of discussing things. We probably can always discuss more.
yeah.
I think we've, as a 2 entities, we've done an amazing job sharing services and coordinating with each other. I think recently there's a perception historically that we don't necessarily communicate with each other or share kind of facilities or that sort of information or financial information or anything like that. Whereas historically that was an issue. We actually had for a little bit of history, we had a shared financial business administrator for a little while that we tried out. That didn't work great, but one of the major things we've done is coordinate with electricity, and because of that, we've had a significant reduction in our electrical costs. So,
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you're
Yeah.
saying. It's just something I think it would be worthwhile for us to explore, and something I've come out of the Charter Commission process, I guess, with is a greater appreciation for both entities kind of needing to have a better understanding of what are the foundational documents. I was talking to Todd before the meeting. I've never seen the incorporation documents of the school district.
no,
I don't know what they are. I don't know, I'm sure they exist in some form or fashion, but it's something I just feel like we ought to get a better understanding of. And, I believe, I can't speak for everyone. Personally, I think it's worthwhile to explore whatever opportunities exist for the school district and the town to, coordinate and think about how we manage the taxpayers' financial resources. So, again, nothing specific I'm proposing tonight, just.
Yeah. I just
wanted to
wouldn't
bring
want to
it
have meetings for the sake of having meetings. If we can have fruitful discussions and
Yeah.
pertinent
Yeah,
agenda
that-
items, absolutely.
Absolutely a concern that was also voiced by people, that there's a perception at least that some of the joint meetings have not been hugely substantive
Yeah,
in
I
terms of
agree.
the agenda, so that's all. Any other board comments before we move along?
We did have the policy meeting, but
Oh.
it's probably worth
Oh.
noting just that we had the meeting, but
Good point.
it's going to be a policy that we're going to be discussing later on tonight.
Thank you.
So it will be very present soon.
Thank you. I completely forgot about that. All right, Todd, the floor is yours.
Actually, I'll start with the Charter Commission, because the Charter Commission invited myself and Steve Fournier to come and speak with them and sort of share perspectives on various elements of the town charter. I was very honest with them up front that my experience with it is very limited. I've been in Newmarket for 3 years, and certainly I can speak to issues like the Budget Committee, like the Capital Improvement Committee, like the election process, like the master plan, and the joint meetings. But beyond that, my experience is very limited. One of the topics that we did end up spending quite a bit of time on was the value of the Budget Committee and whether or not it should continue in its current form. We had a lot of conversation back and forth about it. Should it be a binding thing, or should it be an advisory process? How should that work? And is it too big? And all those kind of things. But one of the questions that did come up that was directed to me that I have since got an answer for, they asked where the authority for the school district's participation in the Budget Committee came from. and the town manager had expressed that he thought there must have been a warrant article that was put to the district at some point in the past that we voted on. At the time, I did not know that answer. I do know that answer now. The town budget committee came about through the revised charter in 1991. Okay, and in 1991, it determined that a budget committee would exist and that the school department would be included in it. In 1993, the state passed a law that would require school districts who were forming budget committees to put a warrant article before their voters to gain approval to create a budget committee. Because that law came after our town had already created a budget committee, the authority for the school district to be under the review of the town budget committee pre-existed that law, so that's where the authority came from. The question that the committee asked was, if the town decided to disband the budget committee, what would that mean to the school district? What it would mean to the school district is we'd have a decision to make. If we would want a budget committee to guide us through our process, we would have to propose a warrant article to the community and create it. But it would become whatever we defined it to be under that scenario. If we decided that we didn't need a budget committee or want one, we could also just not have a budget committee. So those are both options we can consider. But I just wanted to put that out there. I did, like I said, I met with the Charter Commission, and I have shared that answer with them, so with Tony, the chair, so that they will have it at their next meeting. But I wanted to share it with you just because if the conversation came up, I want to be clear, I'm not advocating any position on it. I'm simply wanting to make sure it's a worthwhile, effective process, and that's been my perspective on it. Yeah, Jeff?
So just to make sure I understand correctly, we created our budget committee in 2 years, it looks like, prior to the law that said that you'd have to do a warrant article, so we were effectively sort of grandfathered in without doing a warrant article.
We had already, the town had already created it, and we were included in that
Okay.
structure in 1991, and when the new law came out in 1993, if school districts wanted to form their own, they had to do it, but because we already had one, there was no need to have to authorize it, because the community had already voted on approving the charter.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a lot. Go ahead.
Do you happen to know how that would affect impact fees for us? Would we, if we didn't have a budget committee?
The impact fees, as I understand it, and I'm not an expert, are more tied to the capital improvement committee process. The budget committee is not, my understanding is that's not what drives that. That's more of a desire
you're
to
right.
have,
Yep.
that's more of a desire to have community oversight. Personally, I think there's a value of some form of a community budget committee, if not for no other reason than to just educate the community more. We do live in a time when political processes, people tune out. And so it's, when we have our deliberative session meetings, we get, a single-digit number of participants. So that's not, there's 9,300 people that live in town, so clearly there's a lot of people who don't tune in. So to me, the budget committee is a way for citizens to have some input on it. It has value, but again, it would be up to the commission.
I was conflating, impact
Yeah.
fees with,
I mean, I'd just add, and with the appropriate disclaimer, never, ever, ever use me as a lawyer, but to collect impact fees, you have to have a capital improvement plan. You don't have to have a CIP committee. Many towns, the capital improvement plan is actually developed by the planning board.
oh,
That would be an option for
Means that-
Newmarket,
all right.
is what the gentleman
your
from the
help.
State Municipal Association
Smith said.
explained to us, yes. Just go ahead and disbar me, I'm,
Enough said on the Charter Commission. The other thing I just wanted to talk about is today was the first day back for staff. It was a very energized day. My opening comments were using the analogy of the leaky roof so we had fixed our roof this summer, so I was able to use the Dave analogy of I think it was creative. Anyway, it went quite well. Really, ultimately the theme really was inspiration without action doesn't change things. And so we talked a lot about, we've got all these plans, all these ideas of what we want to do, but we now have to convert those into reality. And I think the analogy of the leaky roof was, the roof is leaking, you need to fix it. If you just stand around and look at a leaky roof, it doesn't get fixed. Dave had to take some steps to make it get fixed in the board. Anyway, it was a good opening. Very energized staff, very energized. I could tell you guys were inspired by my announcements.
One of the most articulate and most humble people. Let's ask him. He'll tell you.
Come on, man, I got a bucket.
So it was a really exciting, energizing time. A lot of time spent in the first day, obviously putting a lot of information in front of people. Patty's going to be talking to you a little bit about the new evaluation model that we're embracing. There's just lots of really exciting new things, and it's always great to get the first day back and see everybody together. You're standing in the cafeteria at the elementary school, and you got 200 people looking at you. It's like, wow. And you realize we are the biggest employer in the town of Newmarket, so it's quite impressive. So anyway, it's wonderful, and obviously next Tuesday is the first day back for kids, and really looking forward to being ready for that and getting them back. So that's all I have.
Thank you. So moving on, and I want to preface this a little bit. So the legislature passed and the governor signed a law that the governor is fond of referring to as the bell-to-bell cell phone ban for schools. The law says something somewhat different, but that's believed to be the spirit of it. And one of the things that the policy committee, working with the superintendent, felt was that it was important to have a policy in place prior to the start of school. The main reason being it's sort of a component of, both Sean and Andy's student handbooks, much more of a concern for Andy than Sean, obviously. You don't see many fourth graders with iPhones, but what the policy committee would like to recommend is that we waive the second read on this policy that we've brought forward, JCIJ, which is the personal device technology policy, so that we can have that in place for the first day of school, with the board's consent. To the extent we get 2 months into the school year and realize we hate it, we can always send that back to the policy committee to review. But for right now, we just felt it was important to get this in place, and we had limited time to do so because of when the bill was signed. So with that, Todd, could you give us a quick synopsis?
I don't think we need to formally vote on it, but maybe just a verbal agreement for each one of us. I think it's fine to waive the second.
Does
reading.
anyone oppose waiving the second reading?
It's
No.
policy BG is the one that defines the first and second reading process. You'd be waiving policy BG.
We can vote on that formally if it makes people more comfortable. We'll kind of tack that into action items before we vote on the policy.
So a quick summary of this, and Dan explained sort of the legislative background and where this came from. I think that the challenge was it didn't really get signed into law until July, and we had our first policy meeting in August, so this is just really as fast as we could get it before you. For the most part, we took the current policy and updated it to match processes that we think will work at both buildings to manage the issue and to bring it in line with some of the specific things that the law requires. Just in terms of summary, it is required in the law that you have to have policies and practices across the school that enforce this. So in other words, you can't have one classroom doing one thing and another one doing another. It's got to be uniform. So that we included language about that. We also, it's very clear about what exceptions are allowed. You can have medical exceptions, you can have IEP exceptions, you can have 504 exceptions, but you can't make exceptions just because we want to let people have devices. So they have to be tied to some specific need. A good example is, for example, a lot of like diabetic students often use their monitors through their phones, and that's a necessary thing for that. And certainly, if you have a student with a language issue, using it, if it's being used for some kind of translation component, whatever, but those would have to be in plans, so that's included. Clearly, the management of the policy really is at the building level, so principal, and in some cases, the athletic director are involved in setting the rules and setting the standards. The law requires a definition of kind of consequence and how it's going to play out in a progressive manner to enforce the, oh, there we go, you can hear me now. You can hear me now. How about that? So the law requires a progressive process and discipline. So you'll see first, second, and third offenses. It does try to give authority to building administrators to make their best judgment in cases. So it's not, always a black and white call. There might be reasons that an issue came up and allows the principal to be able to make a judgment, but it does mean that the rule is consistently followed. And then the last two things, the new law requires annual review of it, and with that annual review, there's got to be an opportunity for community input. So we put in the policy by April 1. We will have done a review and determined if the policy remains the same for the following year. And then the last part is obviously if you have a policy and nobody knows it exists, nobody knows to follow it. So there's an element that says there will be an effort to disseminate that to the community, and we're going to do that through the handbooks, which you'll hear about in a little while. So that's the policy. But generally speaking, although the law does not use the phrase bell-to-bell ban, what this does is it says cell phones and other personal devices will not be allowed to be used from the beginning to the end of the school day, including passing times in the lunchroom and all of those things. And that's where the bell-to-bell ban comes from. That's required by law during the entire school day.
Questions or comments from the board?
One other thing I would just add to what you had said, because it came up in our meeting, and I thought it was helpful in just understanding when you're reading the document, if people are going to read along. We have 3 levels of consequence that are in there, and I believe the law required that you have at least 3. So as you can see, worked within the constraints that we were given without trying to make it too draconian.
I like that word.
Yeah.
Non-draconian. I like that.
Draconian is so out of fashion in education.
It's fringe.
Other questions, comments?
On this policy committee, are there parents on this policy committee too?
No, the policy committee is the board's policy committee.
Okay.
So the parents are not in that. We will need to solicit feedback from parents in the coming months.
And
given the
students.
timing of things. What will happen is we'll get into a cycle of annual review. So on an annual basis, we will be needing to solicit input.
Okay.
My thought is maybe over the course of the fall, we put out a survey to take people's input once the policy has been in effect for a little while to collect some feedback and potentially make some adjustments if we need to in the fall.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I personally, I fully expect that situations that we can't outguess right now are going to emerge. We're just, there are going to be things that are going to happen that we never crossed our minds.
Right.
And we'll have to react and adjust to it. And again, that's part of why we really wanted to write this in a way that gave the building administrators, some leeway to police this, because you don't want it to be a net detriment to education. That would defeat the point of the policy and the law. So.
And for the record, I do want to say, I think there was some general sentiment, particularly at the high school level from staff, that they wanted to do a more restrictive policy. So I don't think this is outside of the realm of where our educators didn't want to go. So it's not, so I think there's a lot of understanding of how to do it and do it well. So it's not as impactful on the learning environment.
Anything else? All right. So next on the discussion list is the financial update report from Bryant Lee.
This is Brian's first official financial report as our BA, so welcome, Brian.
Did you tell him about the special dance?
You can do hazing.
So I just wanted to brief you on the messages that we plan to share with the town.
Hold that thought. Something's.
Okay. I wanted to brief you on the messages that we plan to share with the town budget committee next week, which will be Tuesday, August 26th. So this will be about major financing decisions related to the school district. Really just should be reminders for you all. So the biggest one is the board's decision on the fiscal year 24-25 remaining fund balance at 3.75%. That's the equivalent of $856,000 and $843. The maximum retention amount that was possible at 5% would have been $1,143,467. So this year's 3.75% is a quarter point increase from the level of last year, which was 3.5%, and that's the equivalent of $767,157. And this amount will be returned as part of the unassigned fund balance. So the net effect of this decision is that it will reduce our projected unassigned fund balance by $89,686. So the rationale that we'll give for this decision, we have two main reasons for the recommendation. First, there's a lot of uncertainty with the current operating environment. The economic outlook is murky, and it's hard to predict what future supply chain costs will be. Things could change dramatically depending on what happens with tariffs, for example. There could be a lot of variation in energy costs. We don't really know what's going to happen with interest rates. The political environment is also very volatile, so decisions made in DC or in Concord may have an impact on either our revenues or expenditures. And then secondly, we still have a potential liability of $129,000 related to an unresolved issue with the IRS. This has been ongoing since 2018, and while we're optimistic that the matter will be resolved favorably, there is still the potential that we may have to pay this fine. So part of the recommendation is to retain funds to offset this potential liability. And as you know, we plan our budgets over a year in advance, and we'll do our best to predict future trends and costs. This has become increasingly difficult with all this uncertainty. So it's prudent for us to have an adequate reserve and contingency funding should the operating environment trend in the direction that's not relevant. So as always, should remaining unassigned funds not be adequate to retain the full amount that was voted by the board, the district would retain the lesser amount. So the second thing is that the board voted to approve two expenses out of the fiscal year 24-25 budget. The first is related to retirement severance payments. So in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement, severance payments for retiring staff members are scheduled for disbursement in July. But the board elected to make these payments in late June using remaining funds from the 24-25 budget. By doing so, we preserved $16,500 that would have come out of the 25-26 budget for reallocation of other additional funds. The second expense was the elementary school window project. So the second phase of this project was budgeted at $255,000, and all of it was initially intended to come out of the School Improvement Capital Reserve Fund. $89,250 will still come out of the reserve fund, but the board elected to cover another $89,250 using available funds from the operating budget. those capital reserve funds to offset other capital plan expenses in 2025. I'll talk about that very briefly with Dave. The main rationale that we will give for making these decisions was related to the state legislation that substantially altered the framework for pooled insurance in New Hampshire. A consequence of this legislation is that we return to school care as our provider. This was in order to prevent a pretty drastic cost increase that would have resulted had we gone with our initial plan to switch providers. Still, the transition to school care resulted in an estimated $152,000 increase in our insurance costs beyond what we had budgeted in 25-26. So moving this funding stream to 24-25 will help offset that cost. And lastly, the warrant articles proved to contribute to the trust funds. The first one, you approved $200,000 allocation to the school improvement capital reserve fund. This is to maintain an adequate balance to allow us to finance our capital improvement plan to maintain school facilities over time. Our main expenditure in this coming school year is to repair the roof of the senior high school and to complete the window project. The total expected cost in 25-26 is $521,000, roughly $521,000. The current balance in the capital reserve fund is a little over $1.3 million right now, as of the end of June. You also approved $65,000 to allocate to the special education expendable trust. We're seeing that special education costs have risen significantly. So these funds serve as a contingency in case there are additional special ed students unexpectedly arrive in the district. The current balance as of June 30th in this fund was a little over $368,000. So in summary, if you take the estimated fund balance as of the end of last quarter, which was $973,000, you subtract out the two expenses that were shifted to the 24-25 budget. So this is $16,500 for the severance payment, as well as $89,250 for the window project. You add back in the unused fund, retained fund balance from last year. So this is $767,000 again. And then the estimated retained fund balance, actually the voted retained fund balance for this year, $856,000, $843. And then the two allocations, the reserve funds, $200,000 for the capital reserve and $65,000 for the special education trust. Our anticipated assigned fund balance that will be returned to the town to offset taxes come in at about $512,000. So that's what we plan to share with the budget committee.
This might be a tiny bit in the weeds, but I wonder if we should refer to the roofs as either non-renovated roofs or roofs that were not included in the renovation, just for clarity on everyone that that these are not roofs that are fairly new and need to be repaired. These are very old roofs.
Every roof that is being repaired is 20 years old or more.
But maybe if we kind of keep that in the kind of our discussion and documentation, it might.
That seems like important context for the budget
Yeah.
committee.
Yep, we can absolutely do that. And the anticipated fund balance, obviously, we're still waiting for auditing adjustments, right?
Right.
You and I were talking, you have some general sense, what, do you feel it's gonna go up, down, you think it's gonna stay the same, what are you thinking?
I think we're in the general ballpark. I don't want to
Make promises you can't keep.
Yeah, exactly. But I think we're in the general ballpark.
And just to remind the board, when we have, historically, we've been in that 450 to 500 range, is what we've been returning. This is actually a much healthier spot than we certainly thought we were going to be 3 months ago when everything started piling up on us. So to be looking at a $512,000 fund balance to return to offset taxes, and you were thinking, gee, we might be as little as $300,000 or $400,000. We're in a really good financial spot right now to end this year. So
When we do determine the total offset fund balance, I wonder if we should include what the actual tax impact was for the community, since we'll be able to factor that into the actual taxes, as opposed to the tax estimate that we always put on the warrant that is never really the truth, or I shouldn't say the truth, it's never really an accurate representation or precise representation.
yeah, I mean, that 512,000, based on the calculations we did last year, is going to mean basically 31 cents on the thousand to everybody in town, less than what was predicted.
Yeah, so that's, what did we estimate?
We estimated,
3.94?
we estimated, I'm drawing from memory, I'm looking up.
2.7?
Well, it's the total with everything included was, the estimated was 1392, but that was up from 1334, I believe, this year. So what you're looking at is, you're still going up compared to last year, but it's going up by 31 cents less because
Yeah.
we're returning this month.
Yeah, seems like, again, important context that's helpful to the budget committee and to anybody who's watching the meeting from home.
All of us, people watching.
Well, I'm sure they outnumber the people who'll show up to watch it live.
Probably true.
And we're going to meet early next week just to map out a sort of messaging game plan to contextualize all of this. Because they won't be familiar with the numbers we'll see.
One of the best financial reports you've given us, business administrator.
We're going to start ranking your top three.
Tough photo.
Well, thank you, Brian. Well done.
Thank you.
Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Next on the agenda, Dave Riley will give us an update on the school district capital improvement plan, which is also due to be reported out to the town capital improvement plan committee imminently.
How's everybody evening?
Great. Couldn't be better, can't you tell?
We've gotten a lot of great projects done already under our capital improvement plan. We've done the windows, we've done the roofs. Thank you very much for the reminder. The last roof we did was actually a 20-year roof that's been up there for 28 years. The other roofs were around that same time frame. I'm constantly telling people, oh, we just did all this renovation. Why are you replacing new roofs? Well, we didn't replace the roofs during that renovation, so we've certainly got our money's worth out of these roofs. On that last section, we have changed the way it was adhered and the way it's attached to the roof to prevent this issue from reoccurring in another 28 years. Speaking to the roofers, it's a 20-year guaranteed roof. And I said, tell me we're going to get 28 years again. He said, you're going to get 28 years again. They are primarily done. There may be a little bit more metal trim to be done. Their expectation is to be off our campus Tuesday. The last dumpster will be picked up Tuesday, and we'll be ready to go. So very excited to have that completed. In Appendix A, we discussed things out of the short-term plan. The one thing that's being removed is the gym floor. The people who commonly use the gym floor, coaches, athletic director, because we do sand and varnish that gym floor every year and it's getting that constant refreshing, they said there's no need to do. This gym floor is basically sanding it down to bare wood, removing all the paint and starting over from scratch. And they've said they really don't feel the need for that. The gym floor is in such good condition that we can postpone that expense. So that has significantly brought down my total plans maintenance budget, which is just great news. So very happy to be able to, we look at Appendix B, Capital Reserve Trust Fund Plan, window frames at the rear NAS have all been done, roofs have all been done, so we're very happy there. So coming up next year, we're looking at roof sections 6 and 9 here at the high school. And we'll keep cranking away at roofs, and we'll keep, replacing them. And preventative maintenance is always cheaper than reparative maintenance, and we're out ahead of it. So we're really, we're in a very good place as far as our facilities go.
For the first 4 years on the board, carpets at the elementary school was the perennial topic of replacing carpets at the elementary school. So it sounds like roofs are going to be a perennial topic for the next 6 years.
Well, because luckily, we have no classrooms with carpets in them at the elementary school anymore. We finished that. With the VCT, and the beautiful thing about the VCT, maintain it properly, you can walk on it forever. So, good news there. Section C looks at our, starts to discuss our fund balances. I want to remind everybody that this is a living document, although it does go out for 20 years. Every year we reevaluate it and say, okay, this we can hold off a year. Oh, this is failing faster than we thought. So there's always going to be some juggling. It's always going to be a moving target, and that's on purpose. We want to be able to reevaluate it and hit the school's biggest needs. The last time you saw this, some of the fund balances were dipping a little lower than they are now. I'm very happy with where our fund balances are going to remain. We had at one point it down in the 600,000s, and I was having a real hard time sleeping at night, knowing that was our reserve. I do my best, the capital committee, the capital plan does our best to guess what's going to fail, but it's very hard to accurately predict if something's going to mysteriously burst in flames. So having a healthy fund balance really ensures that we don't have to go to our taxpayers and say, gee, I need $1 million to fix this. I can say, we thought ahead, we planned, we prepared, we've got the $1 million, and we'll have this fixed. An example of unexpected, we have the circulation pumps that run the heated water around the school. One of those pumps failed last year. So by moving some things around, I was able to pay for that without impacting the capital reserve trusts. My whole goal is to keep those trusts healthy as we can. That's our emergency fund. So we're doing very well on that. Very happy about that. If we look at Appendix D, I can try to project more if you'd like. We're good. Appendix D, we're looking at the 26-27. Our only major project are the roofs in section 6 and 9 of the high school. And that's, following our plan, not juggling too many things around. So, I'm very excited about that. I'm really excited to be getting these roofs done. They look beautiful. They're going to last. We're going to be in very good shape. And again, we can look at, Appendix E is just listing what we plan on putting in the capital improvement plan funds. And F is again, showing our balances. I'm very happy to hear that, our interest has gone up significantly. And again, so any money I can leave in that trust, we're earning interest on. So I think, the capital plan, I really think we're in great shape. I think we're out ahead of the game. We're fixing things before they fail. Very happy where we are. Just to throw in some other good news, I got our third round of water testing results back. We tested 140 sources of water in the district. All of them were below the minimum level for lead within our schools, so no actions required. So excited about that too. Really exciting to have the teachers and students back. This place gets a little lonely and spooky over the summer. So it's really nice to have the life coming back into the building. It's very exciting. It's a good time of year for us.
If I can just make a couple of quick points for you. One of the things you'll note in Appendix A is the list of, remember the capital plan was developed with an annual $100,000 built into our operating budget for Dave and his team to be able to take on projects. And then there were projects that were targeted to the capital reserve funds. Reminder that there really are two capital reserve funds currently. One is called the School Repair and Maintenance Fund, and the other one's called the School Improvement Fund.
We are gradually eliminating the school repair and maintenance fund because its definition of what you can do with the money is more narrow than the school improvement fund. So eventually there will be one capital reserve fund for facilities, and that's why we combine the balances, because ultimately that's how we think of them. Going back to the Appendix A, where Dave has very efficiently kept the identified projects low, this actually is something that we can think about as a leverage point as we plan next year's budget. So I think it's something to keep in mind as you look at the funds in our trust funds. It's clear they're healthier than we anticipated. It will leave room for the board when we talk about the warrant, whether or not we want to, whether we want to stick with the 200 every year or whether we want to do something different. We are ahead of the game, and certainly you don't want to read too much into long-term projections, but we are in a good place. Looks like some of the things that we might have expected to take out of the capital reserve fund, we might be able to use more local funds to do it, similar to what we did this year. So it'll give us that flexibility. And I have to give Dave and his team a lot of credit, because one of the reasons why this list is so short is they have so aggressively done so many things in a short amount of time that things are just, they're getting fixed before they're broken. I mean, it's just, that's just the nature of the beast. So I give them a lot of credit. And I do want to acknowledge that Dave commented on the interest that is being earned. I think it's important for the board to think back to 2 years ago when we got our interest statements, and literally we were making hundreds of dollars on, I'm serious, we were making a few $100 on millions of dollars in trust funds. The trustees of the trust funds have changed their strategy. That number that's listed there, $56,909, that's actual money we earn on those trust funds, which is real money to the taxpayers of Newmarket, which feeds our plans and allows us to do these things in the future. So, which is another reason why down the road we look healthier, because we're anticipating a continuation of an interest rate higher than what we had seen previously.
Questions for Dave?
No, just thank you, and I really appreciate you taking the time and everyone else to think about whether we do need to spend the money on that particular year. And not just say, well, it's in our plan, redo the floor. You think about it and make a decision based on that, so it's great to hear.
My goal is to give the students the best experience in education we can, and fixing things that don't need to be fixed, don't work towards that goal. So I'm very happy to be doing it.
Thank you very much.
Well done, Dave.
Well done.
Okay, next on the agenda for us, the elementary school and junior, senior high school handbooks. Sean, Andy, who'd like to go first? Okay. We'll go in a chronological progression.
Good evening, how is everyone? Just before we talk about the handbook, I'd just like to reiterate what Todd said today, is that we had a fantastic opening of school today. And all the staff was really involved with the professional development we did, and they're ready and raring to go. And we look forward to seeing the kids come in on Tuesday. It's always good to have that energy in the building, and it's coming. So.
Watching all the adults sitting at the little short lunchroom tables.
Yeah, the back does get sore after a while, but they were troopers and they did a great job today. So kudos to my staff and to Patty and Todd for kicking us off on such a fine note this year. Our handbook for the elementary school, no real significant changes this year. As I noted up in the opening paragraph here, I will be looking at the cell phone policy, and we'll make sure we get that inserted in there. It was pretty straightforward, updating the staff list, academic calendars. Also, we went through, or I should say Ms. Collins went through and verified all our links in there are accurate and go to the right place. We did update the free and reduced lunch information as well. We removed the Blackboard Connect information. That was the old system that we used to mass email parents or phone parents. That is now through Infinite Campus. And it seems that I've only used it once or twice with Infinite Campus, but it's a great system. So that was, Blackboard Connect information was taken out. We added 2 links to there on page 15. Those are related to food service in the school district. And then we removed 3 policies on page 18. These were policies that were they were taken out by the board early, I believe in the fall sometime, so we were a little behind on that, but we took out the old policy JHR on page 18, that was related to attendance, JIA on page 36, which was related to behavior, and there was a typo on Mr. Pine's part. That last policy removed was actually the old EEAEC, not FC, on page 23, and that's related to school transportation in the building. So those are the changes that were made to the elementary handbook this year. Any questions for me?
Maybe one other typo. We've agreed to change the Columbus Day to have an asterisk and then call it Indigenous Peoples Day. Locally known as Indigenous Peoples Day.
Okay.
Looks like it's correctly used in the middle high school.
We have to locally refer to it as we have to include it as Columbus Day, so we can indicate it's Indigenous Peoples Day.
Keeping you out of jail.
I appreciate it.
Other questions, comments? Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Yep.
I'll let Sean go first because I anticipate some questions about cell phones. As I outlined, as we always do, we take a hard look at this through the lens of what worked and what didn't over the prior year. As the school year goes on, Jay, Jean, and I actually make notes in a printed copy of the handbook of things we run into that cause problems and highlight them to go back and update over the summer. The obvious big one here is the update to cell phone procedures to align with the policy that hopefully we approve tonight. The reintroduction of a pass system. We talked about it this morning with staff. I asked my staff at the end of last year to provide feedback to the administrative team. And one of the things that came out was accountability as a major theme, both administrator to teacher, teacher to student, and finding ways to increase accountability in the system. And one of the easiest ways to address one of their biggest concerns was to reintroduce a pass system. So we updated that language. We're using a strategy known as academic interventions, or AI for short, changing the paradigm a little bit around late work and missing work. And if the idea, my staff heard me today, I got kind of up on a soapbox about this. If you're assigning work and it has value, then why are we accepting that students don't do it? And the example I gave is if Todd says, where's your budget October 1st, and I don't have it, he doesn't say, all right, fine, no big deal. He says, where is it October 2nd? Where is it October 3rd? It's a valuable document that needs to be done. So we're going to use that.
Get yours done on.
I usually do, yes, usually do. We're going to use academic intervention for students who fail to complete their work. That's lunch, before school, after school, or during advisory. This is a quick, non-disciplinary piece. You're missing work for some reason. You need more time with me as the educator. How can I work with you to figure out where the holes are? We highlighted some dismissal. We had a bit of an issue last year where we saw a slew of soon-to-be 16-year-old drivers leaving school throughout the day to do driver's ed. That's not okay. And we realized we were absolutely silent on it in our handbook, so we clarified that. We re-highlighted our restorative and progressive disciplinary practices, and then just went through with a fine-tooth comb to do our best grammar and syntax updates. But the big lift here is obviously cell phones. I highlighted it in my back-to-school letter with staff and students, and predictively have gotten, what about this? What about this? This is going to be a topic that is going to be at the forefront of our minds for probably the next 2 or 3 months. And we want to be as transparent as we can with it to follow the law and follow the policy, as well as make it work for us here within the building.
Yeah, and I would absolutely say, as you find things that the policy isn't adequately dealing with, please come back to us. I mean, maybe bundle them up for once a month or something, but come back to us, because we go into this fully understanding that we're doing this in a rush for reasons that we can't help, but still we're not happy about it. So I'm going to start with actually a question that has nothing to do with cell phones. Pass system, is that hall passes, passing classes?
Hall passes, leaving the classroom. We had like anything, you start hard and firm, and then as the year goes on, things become more lax. And we had a lot of students, specifically during advisory, who were, for lack of a better phrase, wandering the building. We felt that administratively, teachers felt that kids took advantage of it. So to reiterate, they're going to be neon, lime green. There's a whole bunch in my office right now. Something easy in paper, and to be able to go, hey, where are you going? Because right now we don't have, it's a small building, so it shouldn't be hard. This is something staff indicated they were interested in, and we were willing to kind of push through it. So pass as in, I need to go to the bathroom, I need to go to the nurse, or can I go see here?
Okay.
I have one comment. When you said the implementation of AI to support students who are missing assignments or having difficulty in a course.
Right?
Yes, I know,
I would just
academic
recommend
convention.
not ever using the acronym.
We spent about 45 minutes on it today, and by the end of it, we're like, well, we said, everyone knows.
Chat
Yes,
GPT,
spacing
do
it
my
out.
homework.
AI or
Spelling it out.
A1, whatever. No, we're not having A1.
May want a different abbreviation.
Other questions?
When you're talking about highlighting dismissals, about one, you brought up driver's ed, are there other instances
No,
or
driver's
mostly that?
ed, my instinct tells me a kid tried it, got away with it, and then the driver's ed program went, hey, Newmarket kids can leave whenever they want. So then they started stacking up their schedule. And I had some conversation with the driver's ed instructor, the person physically driving the car with the kid. And they're like, oh, it's not us, it's the kid. So he said, you know what, I'm not going to get into this power struggle.
Right.
It was May, we will survive, and then wanted to be really clear, but it was driver's ed specifically.
It's not like doctor's appointments?
No, we're pretty standard with that. It was driver's ed.
Okay.
It's interesting, one of the things out in the passes that caught my eye or ear was about the homework not being completed and being enforced differently for different educators. So it's good to hear that you're
Yeah.
creating some
Yeah.
consistency. I think that's important for students as well as probably easier for the educator.
Yeah, and I ripped some Band-Aids off today, and one of the big ones was reorganizing our teacher leadership structure. This is a very small building. We've historically had department heads, which is great if you've got 7 people teaching sophomore biology. It's a one-man show. The coordination is whatever you say it is, because you're the only one teaching it. So rather than going vertical, we're going to look horizontal. So the 9th grade team can sit down and go, okay, what are our expectations? What are we doing? How are we enforcing this? The 10th grade, the 11th, 12th grade. And to change, you can tell I did this all day, to go away from this to more this to help stabilize those conversations. So you're a 9th grader and your history teacher is using the same language as your English teacher, as your math teacher, in terms of late work and redos and just simple things like to hammer this point. The history teacher in 9th grade is across the hall from our 9th grade English teacher. And they were both doing essay-like work that involved a thesis statement. And they were using different terminology. And the one teacher was off and went, wait, you're talking about a thesis statement. I called it a main claim. Oh my God, we're confusing kids. Hold on, let's sit down and come up with a common language. And that really struck a chord with me as a happenstance and had to systemize to find a better approach. So by incorporating horizontal teams, we're going to have a better outcome for kids and their experience across the grade level.
It's great to hear you guys
Yeah.
thinking of that, and I think it's important that we are consistent across grades, as well as letting them maybe share topic areas for various assignments that kind of makes it easier for a kid to kind of think about things in a more holistic way. Are you concerned at all with the vertical integration that we've been striving for, with the change in leadership structure?
Yep. So the in-house initiative that we're really hammering right now is our UBD2s, our scope and sequence work. When we can, an educator can really clearly define this is the core of this course. Here are the non-negotiables that come out of my English 10 curriculum. These are the things that I teach. Here's how I teach them. Here are my expectations. Here's what kids can know and do. When we have a real hard grasp on that, then we can reintegrate back to that vertical integration piece. It's tough to talk what I'm sending to you and you're sending up to me when I'm not super clear about my own expectations. So having that really solid UBD2 documentation of that daily activity, those lessons, those units, and to really dive into that, then we can begin to flip back. And that was the conversation I had today with people. The light bulbs started going off pretty quickly.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'm from past parent experience, it is great that to work with more uniformity on how the staff is handling late and missing assignments. There's a follow-on piece to that too, I think, though, in terms of managing the staff. If they're going to set the expectation that I'm going to keep reminding you and reminding you and reminding you until you get that late assignment in, once turned in, it can't sit there for 2 or 3 weeks waiting to be graded. The reminder needs to function at both levels, I think, or you really lose a lot of the moral authority to push students.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The second was a little aggressive in how much I thought I could cover today. I got about 2/3 of it done, which was good because we had 50 people having really vibrant conversations. The second half of that is some of the more, one of my favorite nuts and bolts operational size things of my expectations to staff, including things like dating grade book and on your syllabi, what are your, how do parents get a hold of you, and very clearly laying that out. And that's, if any staff are watching, that's what tomorrow morning's going to be. We just didn't get to it tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think the syllabi is actually a great point. Properly and properly managed, that will head off a lot of the angst that the Parent Bill of Rights law can now facilitate and put more teeth into than what has existed historically. So, yeah, I think that's a great reminder that seems like an ounce of prevention on that is worth a great deal of avoiding headaches later on.
As a parent of a recent graduate and someone who's, as of Wednesday, will be a college student. Thank goodness. Dan's remark about remind me kind of made me tick off in my brain. I think it's great to remind at 9th grade. At 10th grade, maybe we don't remind as much. At 11th grade, we start pushing people on, self-advocacy and self-responsibility. Because I think, for me, one thing I'm concerned about is self-advocacy that you really need to have at a college level.
Absolutely, and that's woven into our core values and to our VOG, which is really going to have to start to come to the forefront. Because at the end of the day, we can plant flags around lots of curriculum topics and ideas and courses, but one of those, we know as adults, to be successful in the real world, you have to be able to self-advocate, regardless of what the issue is and whatever line of work you're doing. And if you're used to somebody poking and prodding you, and all of a sudden the spigot turns off, chaos happens. And that's the hope around some of these horizontal teams of like, hey, 9th grade, here's what we're doing. All right, 10th grade, here's what we do in 9th grade, so you can build on it and scale down. We have 11th and 12th grade together, so they can begin to be like, you know what, this is the expectation. This is how we transition off. Even 6, 8, we saw that a little bit with 6th grade really helping the transition for 5th grade, especially for next year. We revamped a lot of that model, and they've had 6, 7, 8 cross-level conversations of, here's our expectation, just so you know. So when they come to you and say, no, we have no idea. But it also helps, I'm thinking specifically 6th grade to 7th grade, saying, here's what we did, great, now we know how to adjust our expectations and to ultimately get the kid.
That was our experience. 6th grade was amazing, it was wonderful. And then there was a pretty stark drop off in 7th grade, which left a little bit of a lift. So
and the goal is obviously gentle
release,
not hard eject.
And I think those, like I'm thinking about what you were saying about waiting until those horizontal meetings and alignment happens to the vertical, but then your vertical meetings are going to be so much more effective, easier.
Yeah,
In my head as an
super easy.
educator, I'm like, oh, okay. Because then you don't have one 9th grade teacher reporting up to a 10th grade teacher one thing and a different 9th grade teacher reporting.
Yeah. Well, in English, this is what we did in 9th grade. In English and in history in 9th grade, this is what we did. You're like, well, no wonder why the kids
And
constantly
it's
confused.
probably, I would think, going to really help educators that they're like, okay, there's no okay, you came from this class, so I gotta do this with you,
Yeah.
or this is what you perceive to be the expectation. I think it's,
I will tell you, people, I was admittedly very nervous today around 11:30 when we were going to begin the Band-Aid ripping off. And by 2:15, I had people, well, their butts were sore because we were sitting all day. And they were nervous, but they were ready to go. They were amped up in a very positive, like, all right, we know where we're going. We can see this. It's new and different, and change is hard, but we're ready to go. So, very energetic.
Good.
2:15, 2:30, and I was very nervous tonight about 11:30.
Anything else?
I feel like we should ask you something about cell phones, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
what do you?
I also feel like we should have Sean come back up. We haven't given him enough questions, but quality Sean.
have some elementary school students.
There you go. They want to ask them about cell phones?
I'm honestly not that stressed about cell phones because it's the one thing in all of this that I'm sure is going to go badly.
That's easy, right?
We know we'll be
It's-
reading
I do
I'm not
think we underestimate how many elementary school students have cell phones. I think we're gonna discover that many more. than we think.
Sean's getting his notepad out. Running things down.
With the Stebbins,
Yeah.
Chairman.
Mine do not, they're on different devices, right? But I think about like the, the Garmin watches and the other things.
Oh, that's a
where
great point.
maybe parents have it because they have to go to a meeting and they leave their 10-year-old at home for hours. And I need to be able to make sure that I can touch base and be safe, but then I think we have elementary school parents maybe have a different feeling about their ability to get in touch with their child, whereas I don't know that you're going to see necessarily. I just think more kids have them as far as young people have reported to need.
I can say that by 12th grade, the expectations of having contact with your child go way down.
Yeah, I guess I'd just share with the rest of the board. From the policy committee standpoint, the two things that we felt the most angst about were the impact that this is going to have on Andy's office in terms of the number of messages that they're going to be asked to pass to students and whether we can deal with that or not, and the travel on a bus for athletics, for extracurriculars, for field trips, whatever the case may be, that those were probably the two things that the policy committee felt the most angst about, and Andy assured us it's all going to go great. So.
We've tackled, had a conversation with our front office staff around, phone's going to ring a lot more, let's be honest about it, having some very specific times during the day. The thing that in the bus transportation, Jamie and I have talked, and that's a real easy communication. He had his fall coaches meeting the other day and said, here's the school policy, here's what we're going to work on. And you're right, when you go up to Conwell or wherever, and you're like, oh God, we're getting on a bus on the other side of the state at 9:30 at night after a basketball game. Yeah, it's okay to have a kid have their phone. My biggest concern is I believe 85% of kids do what you ask them to, and we're going to find out. It's going to be re-educating the parent community. There's an expectation from parents to constantly be in contact with their students. I know you just finished that math test. How'd it go? How was lunch today? I know you were upset about so-and-so. Did they sit with you? That type of information is constantly coming into this building to kids at every moment of every day. And re-educating, and the pushback I've gotten so far has been purely parent. How am I going to get a hold of my kid? How do I need to know? And here's the front office, here's where we're going. I believe kids will do the best they can, and they'll be okay. The thing that keeps me up at night, or I'm trepidatious about, is the parent going, so-and-so forgot their math test or whatever. And I've always texted them, or I sent them, my child and I are in constant communication. That's not going to be an option anymore. Or we're going to see a ton of emails coming in over school email address. Yeah. But that's the thing to me. How do we help the adults communicate with their kids appropriately? Is it really an emergency, or you just want to call and be like, hey, how'd it go? How are you doing today? And that's going to be a tough judgment call.
And as constituents communicate with you as board members, please don't lose sight of the fact, this wasn't our idea.
Right.
You know, there's a state law that says thou must, and it's not that I don't think some parts of it are a good idea, I do, but, you know, ultimately our hands are to a great extent tied. And people can be very upset about that. I'm not going to tell them they can't be, but it's not us they should be talking to, it's the state legislature and the governor.
Absolutely.
Anything else, Kevin?
Do you think the students are going to have a positive reaction to parents not contacting them all the time? I'm going back many years, but I can remember my son was a freshman and he forgot his school lunch. And I brought it down, I brought him the paper bag lunch into the office and he was called out. He told me after, he looked at me after, he said, Mom, never do that again.
It'll be very interesting. I think there'll be some folks that'll be very happy mom's not calling me or texting me as soon as I'm done with English. So I do think there'll be a positive on
All right. Anything else? Thank you, Andy.
that. Thank you.
Okay, the last item under discussion is I understand that Patty has some AV content for us, and
Not a,
Is that okay?
no AI
7
content.
minutes. Yeah, so we're
AV.
really excited. We kicked off, well, first of all, hello everyone. We kicked off our two very important new plans in our district. Our Educator Evaluation Professional Growth Plan and our PD, our Professional Development Master Plan. And the PD plan is the one that gets submitted to the New Hampshire Department of Ed. That was submitted in early June. And these two plans, they're really intertwined. And the plans are very supportive of each other. So they don't stand alone, I guess. And to Lonnie and Gary, who are our both parent and board members serving on our Educator Evaluation Committee, you guys are going to be really excited to see the video. I described it today as this labor of love. It was 2.5 years of really a lot of hard work and good work, and we really enjoyed. There were some 4-hour meetings in the summer and 2-hour meetings after school, but yeah, but we've really developed a wonderful product. So here it is.
Doesn't cover everything we do. We've done a lot of discussing and talking about language and what does it mean to be an educator and what do we want to be and aspire for. I'm really excited because it feels like it fits so much more naturally with how we operate already. It doesn't feel like a checkbox system. It feels like something designed very intentionally to help us with our professional growth and development.
The information is much more clear and is definitely designed for the teachers here at our school.
I have learned a great deal from the educators on this committee. I've learned about their passion for doing what's right for their students, for showing up each day with a smile, with a positive attitude, and knowing that they want to give the best educational environment for their students and giving of themselves.
Our new growth and evaluation model has 6 key components. It starts with goal setting done by the educator. One personal goal and one goal to support their school community.
Now we have the chance to say, you know, this was a personal goal for me, and this is the way that I'm going about achieving it, and having that be a part of our portfolio.
And we know what the teacher next door needs may not be the same thing I need. And so this model is differentiated.
Voice and choice is huge for students, and we talk to our teachers all the time about differentiating for their students and meeting students where they're at. We have to do the same thing for teachers.
The second component is the key difference from the old model. 10 to 15-minute impromptu mini observations.
The teacher doesn't need to prep for it, be nervous for it. You know, we've always called it a dog and pony show the other way, right? So you come in and it's just what's happening in the classroom, and you really get to see any given point in time in a classroom where you can give better feedback to the teacher with what's happening.
I'm going, hey, here's what I saw. That was awesome. Can you tell me a little bit more about this? Or, hey, I saw this. I have a question about that. And it becomes a much more collegial coaching model versus a one-stop shop. Here's your evaluation. Here's all the pressure. Here's all the time. And then not being able to re-engage after that is a huge paradigm shift for us, and something that I'm really excited about.
It doesn't start and stop with administrator visits. Each educator will also engage with a colleague at least once a year.
I think that's going to encourage people to get involved in something that I feel like so many of us wanted to get involved with, and we just didn't necessarily have an avenue to do that. And I think this is going to open a lot of doors, literally and figuratively, for people to just learn so much from each other.
Non-continuing contract educators will also participate in a district mentorship program. Then, each educator will collect and reflect on at least 3 pieces of evidence related to their growth goals, and meet in the spring with an administrator to share progress, including more thoughtful reporting about professional development.
Now we can really think about, like, what are we doing throughout the year that is meaningful to us?
The whole model gives us the opportunity to self-reflect and know and seek out those things that we need, that are very personal to us. It's not a generic model.
This time we're really asked to extend a little bit in terms of how the experience that we had, whether it was a conference or a book that we read or a group that we participated in, how that contributes to our goals and our specific hopes that we have and that we've set up for ourselves.
Then, at the end of each 3-year cycle, all educators will participate in a summative meeting with an administrator. In all, a model we believe reflects who we are as an educational community, driving growth for our educators, our students, and our community.
I think the model is very organic in that way. It feels very authentic. And I feel like it's going to transition really nicely into what people are already doing. It's not going to seem like it's something brand new or something very different.
It's more meaningful. When we as educators think about who we want to be and who we aspire to be, we want the work that we're doing to be something that feels important, and we also want the people around us to know what we're doing too, because there's a lot of good work that's happening with our educators in Newmarket.
In the end, what we're doing is benefiting the student also. In the end of this, by bettering ourselves, we are becoming better educators for our students. So it's a win-win situation.
We're going to be looking to all of the staff in the district as we're implementing this model for the first time for their feedback, because we do want to get it right and we want to make sure that it's supportive of teachers.
Change is hard. Change is hard, change is hard. The mantra of every school. But I believe that once we have the commitment to make that change on a product that is high valued, then I think we're going to see results very, very quickly in a positive sense.
And that's it.
You saw me smiling because I couldn't help but imagine at some
point in the video that Gary was going to drop in like Bill Burr in a Saturday Night Live commercial skit. Look, I mean, these teachers made it through my kids, so they got to be pretty good at this job.
Well, it's, so Dave Cartoonin is a videographer, and Dave is a former, I want to say, Channel 7 news broadcaster. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is his wheelhouse, and that day, I remember, one, I didn't even know I was going to be interviewed. I wasn't supposed to, and the teacher's like, yeah, we really want you to say something, so I was so ill-prepared. But everybody had notes with them, and Dave said to them, put them away. You don't, I need my notes. They're like, nope, you don't need your notes. We're just going to have a conversation. And we just sat here, and he just is so, I don't know, Andy, like so calming that he just was asking you questions that you were in this just conversation with Dave, and he's filming the whole time. And then so I think it's a really nice representation of our work in the model, and Gary and Lonnie, you've been on this committee too, so.
It's fantastically well done.
Yeah, very professional.
Yeah, the teachers, Joanna Allison and oh my God, my brain. Thank you, Shannon. They were so excited because they said Dave really captured, because you're so nervous afterwards, you have no idea. And you leave going, oh, I should have said this, and I should have said this. And they were just so proud that he really was able to portray or convey, what this model means to them. So, yeah, I received a few good words of feedback. I don't know if you did from any of the teachers today. But, yeah, it is so different, so we're excited about it. Yeah. And one more thing I wanted to just touch on was just to really just brag about the teachers that in the entire district, 65 of our teachers engaged in summer work. And so at the elementary level, there were 35 educators. Our K-2 teachers really focused on refining and aligning our new literacy program and the new phonics program, and just how they're in sync with one another. So they just wanted that time to do that. And our grade 3 to 5 educators, many of them focused on, because the text is full of informational text, really having time to look at all those stories and see where they're aligned with our science and social studies curriculum to integrate those. So it was nice for them to have that time. Our middle school, there were 18 middle school teachers. Our 6th grade teachers really worked on those 6th grade wide expectations of what is it to be a middle schooler. Like all those team days, team time. What do those first few weeks of school look like? Recognizing that transition from elementary to middle. So I think they're really re-engaging and reframing, what that looks like for first day for our 6th graders. Our grade 7 teachers also worked as a team on their team expectations. They also then individually worked on curriculum development. And the same with our grade 8 as well. Again, just kind of refining those expectations as a team, who they are, maybe create a little identity, and then look at that curriculum development as well. 9th grade is really exciting. I know Andy has talked about the freshman team. They worked for a few days this summer as well on really like working collaboratively to align the technology standards throughout all those content areas so kids can develop portfolios. And then there's also the freshman seminar teachers. They also worked collaboratively to kind of further develop. Last year was the first year of freshman seminar, so now we're going into year 2. What did we learn from last year? And to kind of further streamline, develop those offerings. Our social studies teachers are directly impacted by the 306s, so they have begun the work. Our path of study of what does it look like for social studies, the core experience 9, 10, 11 is going to look different starting the 26-27 school year, because that is who the new 306s impact, that freshman class of 26-27. So more work with our social studies teachers, and we'll have some help, lots of help for them as well to support them. And our math teachers also worked as well this summer just on curriculum development. And so I'm really proud of over 65 teachers. That's pretty amazing. They don't stop for our kids. So.
That's great.
Yeah, it's great.
I don't want to speak for Lonnie, but it was, despite a few long meetings and hot rooms during the summer, it was really a great opportunity or experience to work with you and the other staff and Amy Hill, and just to see the passion and the insight and the thoughtfulness that went into to this product. And I can't wait to hear what the response is from the teachers over the year. So.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and we're a work in progress. We're going to just
And
continue.
I know I'm repeating myself because I think I talked about it in one of the updates, but I think one of the most admirable things was that this group did not stop at like, oh, this is kind of good enough, or why don't we just borrow this and add that in there? I mean, it was continued on until it was exactly right and fit, but.
Even down to individual words at times.
Yes,
Yeah.
wordsmithing, yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm a little over 30 years as a public educator, and this is the first time in my entire professional career. And I've been a part of a lot of committees, you know, whether, you know, onboarding new math resources, literacy, and I was on a teacher evaluation, professional growth. But I've never had the opportunity to write our own. And it was always like, let's shop around to the other resources out there, let's bring these consultants in, and like, you know, but you're still taking somebody else's, and you're trying to plant that within your own school culture of your educators, and that's really hard, because it doesn't feel like it's your own. This is just, because it's like, it's ours,
Yeah.
you know, down to every single observable indicator, remember? But can you see it? Can you see it in the classroom when an administrator is in there? If you can't see it, get it off the list. I mean, it was just so, like, such great conversation, and I'm grateful, really, for because it's interesting, it's great as educators, someone in the business world that doesn't live it like we do every day, and so your perspective was so important to ask us and challenge our thinking as well. That's a good thing. It makes us all learn and grow. So, yeah, the experience was great.
The mule was a large discussion topic. On
Yeah, the mule was
more
a
than one
large
occasion.
discussion. But anyway, thank you. Appreciate the support.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You're welcome. Make sure what I do all that.
I worry for myself that I knew exactly where they were sitting, exactly where the camera was.
Yeah, right.
But I looking at the books on the shelf. I spend too much time in this room.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
Well, Patty's walk, I do want to say that she has spearheaded this effort, and it's incredible the work that's done, and it's, when you talk about the theme of today, you know, inspiration without action doesn't lead to change. Well, inspiration, everybody agreed we needed something new, but then somebody had to take action and lead it, and Patty has really just spearheaded it in an incredible way. So this is like major groundbreaking stuff that I expect other school districts all over the place will be like, hey, can we borrow the Newmarket model? It's really exciting stuff, so nice job.
Tell them for a fee.
That's what I was going to say.
What's that? What'd you say?
For a fee. All right, that wraps up the discussion portion of the agenda. We have a donation to acknowledge that is large enough that we have to vote on it. So exciting. Todd?
So Carly Harrington won this year's Nick Popoff Award. That's an award given every year to a Newmarket educator. I didn't have the privilege of knowing Mr. Popoff, but apparently he was a remarkably community-oriented person and really cared about getting people involved in the community. And so Carly was awarded the Nick Popoff Award, and she is receiving a grant for $2,150 to be used for classroom materials and so forth to support the work she's doing. Very exciting stuff.
And thank you very much to NCEP for their generosity, as always. Moving along to action items, I would accept a motion to approve the minutes from our August 7th, 2025 meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Jeff.
That's quite all right.
Thank you, Gary. Well, did anybody see anything in the minutes that needs editing or revision?
No.
Addition, subtraction, I didn't either, so good job to Ellen with that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're unanimous on that.
I'll make a motion on the manifest, but I know there's a sub-note in there about notification or nominations for 25-26 staff, might just certified staff.
Shouldn't
be
be in
why
there.
that would be sub.
Ignore that.
Yeah,
I don't
okay.
see that.
Yeah, I think there may be a couple of versions of this running around, but
All of our staff are.
yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was confused. All right, I move we approve the August 21st, 2025 payroll and manifest for a total of $503.08.
Do I have a second?
504, sorry, thousand.
Okay.
Seconded.
I will get there.
Thank you, Jeff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are unanimous, 5-0. I would accept a motion to approve the student handbooks for the elementary school and the junior, senior high school as presented to us this evening.
So moved.
Thank you, Gary. Second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Kathy. Any questions, comments?
Yes. In the document for the elementary school handbook, the calendar for Veterans Day, it says November 11th, and then the 10th is what is highlighted. It is correct on the website. So.
Interesting. I don't know how that,
Okay.
we'll get it fixed, I promise.
All right.
I pulled up the document from the website to make sure
Thanks.
that it.
Any other friendly amendments to the handbooks? All right. With that proviso, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are unanimous. So with the board's agreement, I'm going to insert a 3A here where I'm going to seek a motion to waive policy BG, which is the first and second read policy for policies, so that we can adopt policy JICJ without a second read this evening.
So moved.
Thank you, Gary.
Second?
Thank you, Lonnie. All those in favor of waiving policy BG, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, we are unanimous on that. So with that in place, I'd accept a motion to approve policy JICJ, which is the new mobile device policy, as forwarded to the board by the policy committee.
I move that we approve said policy.
Thank you, Jeff. Second.
I will second it.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm running out of room to write here. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, the board adopts that new policy.
I noticed that the CIP plan was not listed as an approval. I don't think it's necessary you approve it, but it wouldn't be a bad thing to add.
Okay, well, I guess with the board's consent, we'll add a 4A. I would accept a motion to, I guess, endorse Dave's CIP plan to be presented to the CIP committee as presented this evening.
So moved.
Thank you, Lonnie. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're unanimous.
Somewhat conditionally, we should start calling it the CIP though, right?
Yes.
The P plan is a little bit redundant, I think, isn't it?
Capital Improvement Plan.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Like chai tea.
Yes, or non-bread. No, we need, get your bars up on being pedantic, people. And lastly, I'd accept a motion to approve the generous donation of $2,150 from NCEP for the Nicholas Popov Award to Kathy Harrington.
Carly Harrington.
I'm sorry, Carly Harrington, my apologies.
Or two. So moved.
Thank you, Gary.
Second.
Second, Lonnie, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we are unanimous. I would then lastly look for a meeting to enter into non-public session under RSA 91A:3(2), subsections A and C, to discuss a student matter and a personnel matter this evening.
I so moved, yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
I'll second it.
And thank you, Kathy. So by roll call vote, Jeff Boyd.
Aye.
Gary Swanson.
Aye.
Kathy Malsbender.
Aye.
Lonnie Stebbins.
Aye.
And Dan Smith votes aye. We are in non-public. Channel 8, we will not be coming back.